What's all this camera and stuff?
They're wanting to interview you.
Interview me about what? About the murders?
Yeah, it was a reporter. They wouldn't let him come in because of COVID-19.
Huh, I thought I was an attorney. So that's what all these questions is about?
Right.
Huh. So you're running that camera back there?
Yes.
All right. Well, I guess I'll get started then. They said they want to know about me. Well, my name's Tracy Hammerson, inmate number 6892234. And I was convicted in 2010 for the murders of Tiffany Peterson and my wife, Susan Hammerson, and the attempted murder of James White. I'm 46 years old. I've been in here for about 10 years. And well, that's about all it is right now. But let's see. You say you want to know about my upbringing. Ain't much to know. I mean, my mama she's kind of worthless. She was always strung out on some sort of drug, heroin, meth, whatever she'd get her hands on. She didn't care nothing about me. She got knocked up when she was 16, and when she told my daddy, he's 25, and he didn't want to end up in here. You know, people like that, they don't fare too well in places like this. So he took off. I never met him, just heard stories. And so then she got hooked up on drugs and whatnot. I mean, I had some father figures in my life, I guess. He said, you know, she always had boyfriends running in there, you know, as long as they could take care of her and give her some money and whatnot so she could get some drugs. She didn't care how they treated me, you know. They just thought I was in the way, so a lot of them would beat up on me and mess around and whatnot. And, you know, that went on for, well, most of my life and, well, most of my childhood anyway. And until then, I got about 15 or 16 and got some size on me. And, well, one of her boyfriends decided he was going to hit on me, knock me around a little bit, but turns out I was the one that did the knocking around and knocked him clean out, actually. And then Mama got all mad and she throwed me out of the house. I was about 15 or 16, like I said, and you know, I was on the streets. I dropped out of school, and you know, I went and tried to find some work, but that's hard, you know. I just do this and that, you know. By then I was starting to smoke some pot and drinking a lot, and but I started doing some petty crimes and getting arrested here and there. I think the first time I was arrested I was about 16 or 17, and then I was on a job, and I think I was working some construction at the time, and homeowner started running his mouth, and well, I hauled off and popped them a few, and they had me arrested for assault and battery. I did a couple years in state pen for that one, and while I was there, I got hooked up on heroin, and then when I got out, I wasn't out too long, maybe a couple years, and got locked up again for parole violations and armed robbery. I was supposed to do 10 years for that one, and I guess I ended up doing about 4 or 5, and I got out, and that time I actually got clean stuff because I was tired of prison life and didn't want to go back. and was doing okay. I found myself another construction job. It was a nice man. He was an ex-con himself, and so he hired me on. Things are going well, and I stumbled into BB's automotive parts and live bait one day and saw this cute little girl who I thought her name was Betty. That's what I always called her, was Betty. And turns out her name tag said Susan there, plain as day, but I thought it said Betty for some reason, so that's what I always called her. You know, I'd go in there day after day wanting some live bait and buying crickets and worms and stuff. Funny thing is, I didn't even fish. I just wanted to see her. And well, after a little while, I finally got up the nerve to ask her out. When you know, she said yes, and 2 months later we got hitched. I know 2 months, it don't seem like much time, but she had some ex-boyfriend, and he had her on the line for like 8 years before that. And she said she wasn't gonna mess around anymore. She said she was either gonna get married or get single. And so we got married after 2 months. And you know, things went on pretty good. You know, I was staying clean because, you know, I was having drug tests, been on parole and everything, and things worked well for a few years, I guess. But then, well, then the housing market crashed and they laid me off. And that's when things started going south. Click. Well, so I was telling you about what happened after the housing market crashed. And well, after that, I started drinking a lot and doing drugs again. I was off parole, and I was real mad. I was mad at the world, you know, for all the stuff that happened to me in the past, and all what was going on. And so what I did was I ended up hitting Betty a lot. You know, she just made me mad. Sometimes I think she made me mad on purpose. Other times I just walk in and pop her upside the head for no reason at all. I know it wasn't the right thing to do, but you know, I was just so mad and drunk and high all the time. And that went on. She put up with it for a couple of years, and then when it was Christmas Day, she wanted to go to her mom and daddy's house, and well, after she went to her mom and daddy's, she said she wanted to go, and I didn't want to go, and she kept on running her mouth about going. So finally, I just hauled off and hit her one time right in the eye, and so she went on without me. Well, you know, when her mom and daddy saw what I had did, they wouldn't let her come back home. And then a couple months later, well, about 3 months later, actually, on March the 4th, 2008, she done took out a restraining order on me. And that's how I ended up at BB's that day. See, I got served papers, and I got really drunk and really high, and I decided I was going to go out there, so I got on my motorcycle. I went. Yeah, I got there about 6:20, I guess. And I waited in the parking lot, you know, for a while, smoking and drinking, and I think I even went around the back and shot up some more H. And then about 10 minutes before closing, I walk inside, and I waited for everybody else to leave, and I walked up to the counter where that little old girl, Tiffany, was, and I started asking for Betty. Well, and she told me that she didn't know anybody. Well, I knew better, you know. She's my wife, and she'd been working there for, you know, 18 million years. And I was so drunk and high, I forgot all about the fact that her real name was Susan, because, like I said, I always called her Betty. Well, she kept on saying she didn't know, and I didn't believe her. And so she was you know, she was calm, but I was really upset. So I pulled out my 38 special and started waving it around, and she just started saying, "Mister, I don't know who she is, and she's not working here." And then about that time, James White come up behind me, and when he did, I jerked, and my finger was on the trigger, and it shot him twice in the gut. And he went down, and I started asking him where Betty was, and he started saying she wasn't working. Well, she almost always worked on them Tuesdays, but you know, I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't believe him. But then something behind me like fell or crashed. I don't know if Tiffany dropped something or what, but I turned around. Next thing I noticed is James was trying to get up and run away. So I just turned, and I wasn't thinking, and I shot him in the back. He went down, and Tiffany started screaming. I turned around to her, told her to shut up, and she didn't. So I shot her in the leg, and then I turned around, and I went around and got the money out of the cash register, $210, and I lit out of there. I got on my bike and I went home. Well, thought it was home. I done forgot that I didn't live there no more. I was so messed up, and but Betty was there. And so I walk in, and here she was, and she starts screaming at me, and she didn't know what had just happened. And I started hitting her, and then I started stabbing her and shooting her and stabbing her and shooting her. And sooner or later, I came to my senses and saw what I did, and then I grabbed my bow and arrow, you know, for hunting, and got on my bike, and I went up to North Carolina. When I was a kid, you see, the only place that I ever got to go in my whole life was the North Carolina mountains. I went to summer camp. I don't know, maybe somebody at school heard I was needy or something, and Mama was just happy to get rid of me for, you know, a couple of weeks. And so I went up there, and that's the only place I was ever happy. So I went up, spent some time, and went into the woods, and I bought me a tent with that $210 that I stole, and I hid out there, and I must have hid pretty good, because they didn't find me for about 6 months. That I went into town and get some supplies, and I guess somebody recognized me from America's Most Wanted or whatever, one of them programs. And next thing I knowed, I was surrounded by the FBI, and they was pointing guns at me and put me in the back of a car. You know, I just put my hands up, and I went right with them. You can stop it. So it says here you want me to talk about the trial some. Well, I hate to disappoint you, Mr. Reporter, Mr. Hicks, but ain't much to tell. You know, I was planning to plead guilty, but Mr. Stan Stevenson, the prosecutor, he said he wasn't going to plead out. He was going to give me the death penalty. Well, ain't no reason to plead guilty if they're just going to stick a needle in your arm. So, you know, I decided to roll the dice and, you know, plead not guilty. Well, trial went on. I mean, they had me dead to rights. I was on video, you know, shooting Tiffany and James, and I mean, they had my fingerprints and, you know, bloody footprints and stuff all over the house where I killed Betty, and I mean, they pretty much had me dead to rights, but, you know, still the trial went on, and I just sat there, you know. I didn't want to look at anything or hear anything. I just sat there and stared at the wall whole time. I didn't care what anybody said. I knew what was going to happen. They were going to put me to death. So I sat there, and, you know, and then they said it, guilty. Well, that wasn't surprising. But, you know, it says here about Miss Beulah. Was my life changed by that? Huh. my life changed by what Miss Beulah said? No, it wasn't. Not then. Anyway, you know, like I said, I wasn't exactly glued in on what was going on in my trial. But, you know, when she said when she told the judge that she didn't want me to die, honestly, what I thought she was stupid. I mean, if that had happened to me, I'd have been pretty mad. I'd want somebody dead for that, you know. That's what I deserved. Even I knew that. I didn't want to die, but I figured that's what's going to happen. And when she said that, well, you know, I felt lucky. She said she forgave me, but I didn't even really understand what that meant. Forgiving me for what? I didn't kill her, but you know, about a couple years later, after being locked up, I got into a scuffle. You know, I was in the mess hall and somebody tried to take something off my plate and I wasn't having that. Picked up my tray and hit them with it. So I got locked up in solitary for a little while. And while I was there, I started thinking. Started replaying stuff over in my head. And, you know, my life that I'd been through that thus far and all the stuff that had gone on. And, well, I started thinking about the trial. And that's when I started thinking about what Miss Beulah said and how she forgave me because of Jesus. And that, you know, I started thinking a lot about that. I didn't know much about Jesus. Of course, I didn't grow up in church. My mama, the only time she walked in there was to get a handout. And, you know, but craziest thing, the very day that I got out of solitary, I got a letter that said James White wanted to come and see me. Well, I figured he just wanted to yell at me. I mean, if I got paralyzed by somebody, I'd be pretty mad. I'd want to tell him about it. But he came in there and he just started talking to me like I was a normal person. Nobody talked to me like that in a long time. And of course, nobody come to see me. He's the first visitor I had. And he kept on coming back, asked if it was all right to keep visiting. And week after week, James would come in and see me. He, you know, and eventually we became friends. And I had to ask him, I said, you know, James, why are you doing this after what I did to you? And that's when he told me. He said that he forgave me. And he forgave me because of Jesus. He told me he'd been struggling for a long time with anger and stuff, and how he let that go because of what Jesus did for him. And so one day he brought me a Bible, and I didn't understand it much, so I went and talked to the chaplain, Chaplain John. He's a real nice feller. You know, I started going to the services and whatnot and learning more and more. And then I realized and found out what Jesus did for me. And I asked Chaplain John, I said, you know, he forgave somebody like me, somebody who killed two innocent people, and tried to kill somebody else. Surely Jesus doesn't love me. But he said he did. He said he did love me. He says he does love me, no matter what. And he forgave me. Well, then I went and got baptized because my mama never had me baptized when I was a baby. So I got baptized, and I realized that if Jesus could love me, I could love me too. You know, because for a long time I hated myself. I hated the world. But if Jesus loved me and loved the world, I should probably love it too. And I learned to forgive my mama, myself, all bad things ever happened. And I was able to see that somebody loves me, even though I've done some really bad things. I tell you, that cross, it changes everything. Sure did change me. So I hope that's what you were looking for, Mr. Hicks. And I look forward to seeing your article come out. You know, just let Chaplain John know I'm his assistant now, if you can believe that. And well, you have a good day, sir. And you try and stay healthy. God bless you.